Hey, this is Charles Onyett. I'm here with Anthony Gallegos.
Hello.
And we are checking out the 1.2 update for Star Wars The Old Republic, BioWare's Star Wars MMO. One of the systems added in this update is called the Legacy system. And what it allows you to do is a number of things, but one thing I can show off right here is when you get a character to level 50, you then unlock their race for other classes. So I have a Zabrak Inquisitor up at 50, and so I now have Zabrak unlocked. So if I were to go back and create another class to do the whole leveling experience over again, I could select them if I wanted to. If it was locked out previously, it becomes an option.
Right, you could make like a Zabrak Imperial Agent at this point, and that wouldn't have previously been something you could have done.
Yeah, so that's one perk, at least on the character creation side. I'm going to go into the game and actually show off more of that system, as well as some of the changes in the main station. I'm not going to be able to get into all the dungeon content. There are new dungeons in the game operations and flashpoints. And flashpoints, in case you're not familiar with the Old Republic, are the basic dungeons, the instances, if you will, and operations are raids.
I mean, obviously the big draw of this most current one, there is that new content, but the fulfillment of the legacy system is kind of the big draw here.
Yeah, and what the legacy system does do is encourage you to make alts, because there's so much content in this game. I think the problem with it is that once you're through the 1 through 50, you don't really have that storyline content anymore, and that's really what set the game apart in the first place. So
Right.
A lot of this legacy stuff is built to get you back to other content and get you leveling other characters and things like that. So I have Tak here, a level 2 noob, basically, and I have Shog, who is my level 50, and what I can do here on the legacy screen is relate them in different ways. So I can add as a spouse, a sibling, child, adopted child, ally, and a rival. I don't know, so it just changes the little icon there, and then it changes the orientation if it's a child, adopted child, okay, same sort of thing. So this just lets you set up a little bit of interrelation between your characters, so it doesn't feel like they're just, I guess, questing in a vacuum.
Yeah, you can add your own lore, have a big old family tree. The son of your Ratataki Imperial Agent ends up having 2 children that become, and then they have a rival. If you're really into it, it creates a lot of story options.
Yeah, it's definitely for our peers. And then you get specific class unlocks. So these are global unlocks. So I can, because I've leveled my Inquisitor, I have an emote here. So I can do an Inquisitor emote if I want. And this is with other classes. So if you create other characters, these become available. There's a buff. So this is my buff over here. So a version of that is unlocked globally. And also a heroic ability, in this case a lightning storm. But in order to use this lightning storm, because I think BioWare was conscious of balancing issues, let me just do a lightning storm right here. This is a lightning storm.
But now you could do a version of that if you were to make a bounty hunter or an Imperial Agent, and normally they would never have any sort of force abilities.
Right, so basically what you do throughout the system, if you were to level a whole bunch of characters, is you get these unique abilities on all of your different characters, so there's a little bit of interconnection between the classes. It unlocks different skills. You also get, if you're really into companion conversation and leveling, you can unlock special bonuses there as well. The catch here is because while that might throw it a little bit out of balance in PvP or in dungeon experiences, if some classes were using other classes' powers, it's only available with a heroic moment ability. So you need sort of your companion out. There's a big cooldown on these heroic moment abilities, which I'm
20 minutes
over
on
here.
there.
Yeah, so you can't spam them, and when you're in arenas or war zones, as they're called, and dungeons, you're not going to have your companion out anyway. So that's kind of how that is balanced. For PvP specifically, which is a lot easier to show off, there is actually new gear in the game. So if you've been chasing gear sets, there's new stuff, and this is the stuff that I'm going to be chasing. And I actually hid my headpiece right now because it looks ridiculous. I do not like this ice cream cone armor set here.
It's something, all right.
It's a little much. I think.
You don't look particularly evil.
No, I'm not entirely satisfied with that look. But the new one is pretty interesting. It looks extremely evil, and I can bring it up here in a second. Unfortunately, these preview panes aren't the greatest image quality, but you can see it here. It's kind of this evil mask that I'm wearing that looks kind of swamp creature-ish, which I think is reinforced by the, let me find one I can equip, by this. A little less elaborate than my current armor, but it's pretty cool.
Makes you look like a Lich King or something. It is much more evil.
I've got like these reeds sticking out of my shoulders and things like that, but it's definitely evil looking. I would not want to fight that guy.
And I would say quite different from anything that's out there already. I mean, it is something new to really chase for people that are already high level.
Yeah, so. It does stand out a bit more. Which is nice to see. And then the war zones themselves, I will go into in a second, but they've unfortunately not added ranked war zones in the 1.2 patch. That was supposed to be included in the patch, but now it's just at some point later. I guess it just wasn't ready for launch, so they couldn't pull it off. There is still a new war zone included though, which is down here, Novare Coast, which I'll show off in a second. The other thing I can show off here, that makes a little bit more sense, is UI customization, which, here we go, open the editor here, and yeah, so now you can actually switch your UI, which is pretty nice, and you can adjust the global scale so you can make it huge in case you have some severe sight problems. That looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can see all 4 inches of the game.
I can't wait to play this for 200 hours. This will be amazing. But since I'm pretty familiar with what most of those options do anyway, you can really scale it down and get it out of the way, so you can just concentrate on the in-game visuals. And I like something like that. Well, actually, maybe I made that a little too small, but you can adjust the global scale. And then you can go in and actually move around individual components. So if I didn't want the mini-map up here, if I wanted it down in this corner, I can do that. And
or if you want the mini-map to be bigger because you have a hard time reading it.
Yeah, and if I'm like, well, I don't really need this quest text, is totally unnecessary to have it in a huge kind of size on the screen, so I can scale that down to something really small. And just kind of hide that over here or something, and then bring the mini-map over and make that a lot bigger, which is kind of nice. I like having that kind of control over the interface, and it's certainly preferable to having no control over the interface. So that is a really nice addition. I'm glad this has been included in 1.2.
I like that it looks so intuitive as well. It's really, I mean, everything is that overlay that they do on it makes it actually really easy to see what you are currently tuning.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope that's something they continue to iterate on with future updates after 1.2. Actually, I will point out, they do tease a little bit of what's coming in. Actually, that doesn't really help for showing things because I just made everything way smaller, so I'm going to...
Scale back up real quick.
I'm going to bring it up again here. But yeah, they tease some of the stuff that'll be coming in the next big patch, 1.3. Which you can see here, and one of them, these travel options, again, increasing your sprint speed, just letting you get around a little bit more quickly.
Perhaps
actually unlocking experience bonuses from killing major enemies in flashpoints, and as well as completing space missions, and from completing war zones, so they basically make it easier to level through doing specialized content. And
they also have one on there that lowers the level requirement for your first speeder.
That's true, so you do get speeders a little bit faster. So again, just making the alternate character experience a little bit more convenient with a lot of the updates here, because yeah, I mean, I imagine it has to be a logistical nightmare to try and come up with all the story content for all the classes every time you do, or for updates. Like, that has to be such a production work to do all the voice work, to do all the writing, to do all the quest design and everything like that. I can't imagine additional content like that will come out at any kind of regular rate. That's going to be a rarer thing.
And there is a ton of content in the base game that I doubt most players will ever fully experience, just because it's so many hours.
Yeah, I really don't think I'm going to level 2 characters to 50 in this. I mean, the leveling was great, but that's a lot of time spent with one game. Anyway, so I'm going to jump into the new Warzone now, and we'll take a look at how that works and how PvP has changed, or how it hasn't. All right, so here we are in Novare Coast. This is the 4th Warzone added in, well, it's the 4th Warzone overall, the first added in 1.2, and the first new one since launch. And what the Warzones are they're just little arena modes, so they only last like 10 or 15 minutes, and then you get bonuses at the end of them. And this is essentially the primary way to earn PvP gear in the Old Republic. They also have Ilum, which is an open PvP zone, a PvP lake, if you want to call it that, which is just where people run around and kill each other randomly. And it is pretty random and doesn't really work very well.
Yeah, this is very organized, objective-based.
Yeah, and I tend to enjoy. I've spent some time on Ilum, and it was not fun. I mean, I understand that you basically create your own fun there, but there wasn't enough to really to drive it and make it something that I'd want to return to. However, I do like the war zones, and I know a lot of people complain about Hutball because it triggers a lot when you do the searching for war zones, but I actually really like Hutball. I think it's a really well-made game.
I think it's fun. It's just that I think, I agree with a lot of people, though, that at other times you want to change the pace, but you don't have any control over that. So.
Yeah, and that would have been one thing I would have really liked to have seen in Update 1.2 is the choice, the power to choose which war zone you actually go into, which is not included here. You still queue up for war zones in general, and then it just drops you into whatever happens to be open at the time. So if you really want to play the Novare Coast map, you just kind of have to wait for it to trigger when you're in a queue.
So Novare Coast follows the same format as another war zones.
The Alderaan Civil War map is similar in that there's 3 capture points across the map, and you can see that towards the upper right near the mini map. There are those little colored turrets, and you fight for control over the 3 spaces. And then if you have control over a majority of them, so 2, you will do more damage to the other team's percentage. And then when the other team's percentage drops to 0, they lose, you win, and you get the bonuses. So basically it's about defending and about being agile enough to move from spot to spot so that you're always in control of at least 2 of them. The nice thing about the interface in the top right is you can sort of see when a point is being captured, because it can be kind of half or a quarter, in this case, captured.
Yeah, you can tell when it's in trouble.
Yeah, so I mean, of course your team should be communicating anyway about which point you should be at. But that's just a nice little bit of the interface up there. But yeah, it's not radically different. BioWare has not created a second Hutball or a completely new game type that really feels different. It's basically just a control point map.
And just like the other ones, this one doesn't require you to be level 50 to play. It's more that it'll level you up artificially to 50 for the sake of the battleground.
And that's actually how I played a lot of I did do a lot of the questing content when I was leveling up to 50. But I did like heading into the war zones to get not only the experience bonus, but I really do think the war zones are a lot of fun. And I know the Old Republic is not really a PvP game, but in the end game I found myself in war zones more often than anywhere else, just because there isn't a dungeon finder in the game. And I know BioWare has said before that they didn't want to add a dungeon finder, at least at launch, because it would sort of screw up the dynamic of how people experience the content. Because if they were just doing dungeon finder, then they wouldn't necessarily be doing the quest, because they would just be jumping in and out of the dungeon finder the whole time. So it would interrupt the flow of questing, which kind of made sense at the time, but at this point it's like there really needs to be a dungeon finder in the game, because trying to find a group is just, you can do it, but when you only have an hour and a half to play or something like that, and you spend 45 minutes trying to find a group because you want a very specific
composition.
Specific flashpoint that you want to get into, then it can really be a pain. And these are just much more accessible because you can queue up wherever and just hop in and still get the end game loot and things like that. Still get the end game gear.
I would like to point out that you're doing some pretty epic healing, by the way.
Yeah, so my Inquisitor, my Sorcerer, is spec'd for healing, and that doesn't seem to have changed all that much. I've been away from the Old Republic for a couple months since I hit 50 and did grab a few pieces of the endgame gear, and they have made a couple tweaks to how the healing works, but it's more or less basically the same thing. It's a fun experience. I like healing in the game. There are a couple cool mechanics that give bonuses to your healing depending on which order you use the heals in, and that static barrier that you see me putting up there, that shield which absorbs damage, is very important. I also have an AoE heal, area of effect heal, which you can see right there, Revivification. But yeah, that sets down that purple circle on the ground, and then anyone who steps in that then will heal periodically over time, which is
it's a great PvP talent.
which is great for PvP, and that's not an ability you get for a while you're leveling, but especially in these endgame war zones, it becomes essential. And of course, yeah, I want to keep my teammates alive, because a healer, I mean, pretty much makes the difference between whether your team lives or dies. And then I have a couple cool other abilities, like this smash ability that I just did there that does an AoE knockback, which is really useful, especially when people are trying to capture points. If they're locked onto something, then that can interrupt that. And here I'm going to put down an AoE field again, which you can see just
keeps everyone going.
Really helps out and helps me up my healing, so that at the end maybe I'll get some more Valor or Commendations or something like that, and get more medals. And this is capturing right there, so that's just how you capture. You can see it goes pretty quickly when you've got a lot of people there. One thing though that still irritates me is people at the end of a match, you're given sort of a stats readout, and you can assign MVP ratings depending on who you think was the most valuable player of the match on your team. And people still do not look at the healing category. I just feel like they're just looking at who would. Well, first of all, some people don't assign their MVP votes, which they really do because they give you extra bonuses. But some people are not looking at the healing category because they're just like, oh, this person's number one, default most valuable.
There's a mentality of damage and kills dealt is the most important. But obviously, if you watch this video, you can see that healing obviously makes a world of difference, because the people getting the kills wouldn't be getting the kills.
Yeah, and I'll be sitting there with like 5 times the healing of anyone else, except they got more medals, so they're ahead of me in the standings, and it's just that can be frustrating sometimes. That's not the case all of the time, but I feel like in general the healing category is not looked at in the post-match statistics.
Yeah, there's room for improvement with some of the way that they present the PvP information.
Yeah. And so what you see here is just flowing back and forth between capture points. So there is a little bit of a run. It's pretty open terrain, so in Alderaan, for instance, there are multiple levels to the stage. You can kind of go underground at one point, but here it takes, I feel like the points are a little bit more spread out, so it takes a little bit longer to get somewhere.
And speeders are intentionally disabled as well.
Yeah, and you cannot hop on a speeder or something like that in order to gain a bonus. So I mean, it's a fun war zone, not anything radically different. It's pretty much the same mechanics we've seen already. I hope BioWare continues to add more war zones, and I'm sure they will as the Old Republic's lifespan continues. Unfortunately, I don't know if 1.2, in terms of, at least from strictly the PvP side, I haven't seen the new Flashpoint or Operation or anything like that. The lack of the ranked Warzone stuff that actually keeps very detailed track of how you're doing and how you stack up against the community, that really needs to be in, I think, for me to really get an interest. And I really want to be able to pick my Warzone.
Yeah, I just think for people that want to play competitively, those aspects missing kind of keeps them from feeling like they're making any sort of real progress.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely like parts of this game, and I don't want to come off as too whiny, but I really would like to be able to select sort of where I'm going, because some of the... I like these capture point stuff, but I'm not a huge fan of Alderaan, and I don't necessarily, even though I do like Hutball, I don't necessarily want to play it 50% of the time, or I don't know the exact specific statistic that it triggers, but it seems like it happens a lot.
Yeah.
So for more on the Old Republic, you can keep checking back with IGN.com, or check out IGN's YouTube page.